Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new Kanye album, Yeezus. Kanye West is a Chicago rapper and producer who has been one of the biggest names in hip-hop music for the past decade or so. He is a guy who I've admired for quite a while now because of his forward-thinking production when it comes to making beats. Very few people out there in the mainstream are as lavish, creative, or as eclectic as Kanye. And it's also impressive that over the course of his career, he's been able to challenge his fan base with a few different sounds and directions, even if it's meant some disappointments, like the LP 808s and Heartbreaks, but still this risk-taking has paid off in the album My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy back in 2010, one of Kanye's most successful albums to date, critically acclaimed across the board, except maybe not so much with me. But recently, and I mean like since 2008, I think a lot of Kanye's songs revolve around just this really boring portrayal of egoism. And of course, this is coupled with some really weak hooks, some terrible singing and auto-tune. Still, even though there were some characteristics that I didn't really like on this album, I didn't hate it. I liked it a little bit. But the way that people reacted to my review, I might as well have hated it. And I feel like this partially has to do with how much Kanye's fans buy into the idea that he is so shocking and does offend so many people. But honestly, from my perspective, I feel like ever since Kanye has gotten more indulgent with his music, and this is since 808s, he's been stretching his talents really thin. And Kanye admits that he's not a great singer, but he still puts it onto his records under the assumption that it brings his album's character, and for sure it does, but I feel that his voice and the auto-tune just really, the quaintness of it wears thin. Not only this, but I am just not that invested in Kanye airing out his dirty laundry. And I know that some people are, and he makes music like that for his fans, and partially he does it because he's egotistical as well, which honestly I don't necessarily see as a bad thing. A lot of successful artists are egotistical, and I don't really begrudge them that. I think the fact that Kanye is a great producer and has had a very long shelf life in hip-hop music has earned him, for sure, some pretension, but I personally feel that Kanye's first three records, the production was classier, the topics that were tackled were a bit wider. Nowadays, many of his songs just feel like they're consumed by his place in the music industry, his place in the public eye. And even though Kanye does come off egotistical, it's not like lie to ourselves here. We know that, kind of underneath all of this overacting, Kanye is insecure. Why else would he feel the need to respond at just about every jab at his public persona? And just how much Kanye pumps himself up in his own songs, it feels kind of like an act, which of course it is for many rappers out there, but I feel the way Kanye does it, it's not exactly flattering. In a lot of ways, I feel like he's evolved into a grown-up Tyler the Creator, where he's really just being over the top to get a rise out of people. But at least Tyler can kind of come down from that and diss his audience straight to their faces for their glowing fanaticism. Instead, Kanye just continues to fan these flames, whether it be in his songs, or in music videos, or in interviews, and I mean, honestly, I feel that he trolls. However, I can't really say that that's changed on this new LP. Maybe it's actually gotten a little bit worse. Even though sonically, this album is unlike anything Kanye has done before, I'm enjoying the creative, forward-thinking production, but I'm pretty meh on the lyrics, the hooks. Now, don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying Kanye is a bad lyricist, period. Kanye can actually be pretty introspective, thrilling, nuanced when he wants to be. For example, with what is one of my favorite songs on this LP, New Slaves, an album that starts off with a few chilling lines about an era in which his mother grew up, the racism that was around then he sort of brings it to the racism that is there now that he feels that he is currently dealing with. He throws out all of these black stereotypes and puts them on display very vividly, as if they had all been said straight to his face by the people that he rubs shoulders with. And even though Kanye is incredibly passionate. He's screaming, nearly screaming a lot of his lyrics on this track and other tracks here. I still can't feel like as he's saying, "You can't control me," it still feels like just a pastel commercialized revolution. The same materialism that Kanye spits all over on this track is the same materialism he embraces on other songs on this very album and other songs that he has put out in the past. Still, this track and another song off of this LP, Black Skinhead, really put Kanye in an interesting position. New Slaves being a track where I feel like he, as a black person, is revolting against racism that he is facing down. Then he is turning around on Black Skinhead and some other lines on this album and facing down stereotypes that are thrown onto him by other black people. There are moments on this LP where Kanye talks about getting flack for wearing polos and backpacks. There's actually a line on this LP where he says something about older rappers having a high school mentality. It's moments like this where Kanye actually forces the listener to reevaluate racism today in America and cultural norms, whether you're white, black, whatever. The problem is he delivers these very interesting and aggressively delivered messages with just pure mindlessness and some really trashy lines. Not on these songs particularly, but with lines like, "Get this bitch shaking like Parkinson's," "Don't judge him, Joe Brown," and a line about black dick being all in your spouse again, and these lines are just all on the first track alone. Honestly, these are like Lil Wayne level punchlines. Even though Kanye's production on this LP is different and it can be strange and sort of filling, when it comes to his lyrics, whether he's angrily ordering a croissant or eating some Asian pussy with sweet and sour sauce, his verses are just empty calories. I have no clue where Kanye's menage is, and I don't really care that he's going Bobby Boucher. I honestly think that Yeezus presents some of Kanye's most rushed lyrics ever. It's actually making me wish instead that I was listening to his verse on the I Don't Like remix. At least that had the funny Suge Knight line. I just talked to Jesus. He said, "What up, Yeezus?" I said, "Shit, I'm chillin', trying to stack these millions." Like Jesus would even care. These lines come from the track I Am a God on this LP. On the refrain from this track, Kanye goes on to say that he is a God, but he's a man of God. His life's in the hands of God, so stop playing with God. With this level of very basic lyricism, it's really hard to see Kanye as any kind of deity, even if it is a musical one. Is what I'm hearing here somehow divinely inspired with all the very noisy and driving and synthetic production on this LP? If anything, it's Death Grips inspired. The beats on this LP shows Kanye jumping right onto the industrial hip-hop bandwagon, which has been growing over the past few years. And at times he does do it with a pretty attentive ear, like the beat on the opening track from this thing, On Sight, which in moments I guess sort of reminds me of the opening track from Death Grips' latest full-length LP. The track features this section of a bass line from an acid house tune and just distorts it, compresses it, pumps the volume up, and just repeats it over and over and over against a few little hi-hats. It's ultra brittle, very noisy, but I still can't help but feel like I'm listening to some really haphazard beat no matter what way I slice it or look at it. It's harsh, but it's kind of boring. Daft Punk had their hands in the production on this thing, but it doesn't really make me enjoy it. At the end of the day, I can really only say that this song is challenging for Kanye's audience. Yes, it's not exactly traditionally enjoyable. It doesn't follow this really catchy verse, chorus, verse structure, but it's not exactly on the fringe in the same way that Death Grips, Clipping, CX Kidtronic have been over the past few years. This track aside, there are some great ideas in the production on this album, but still I come away sort of having my issues. The song Black Skinhead, a track that I do like topically and lyrically, feels, I don't know, just kind of like a Marilyn Manson instrumental that Kanye rapped over. It's got this really moody lead melody as well as this drum beat that I think was sampled from Gary Glitter. And while Daft Punk did have their hands in the production on this thing, I do wish it was just heavier. The song I Am a God does bring that heaviness that I want. It's got this really distorted, resonant bass, a driving, pulsating beat that is just so tense. But the song's also got this really incessant synth riff that is completely obnoxious. And the song Hold My Liquor, while it does have a really great melody and some lush harmonies toward the latter half of the track that I loved, to hear Chief Keef auto-tuned all over this song, I threw up in my mouth a little bit. There's just no way that could have been presented to be good. Though again, I do like the pulsating electronics all over this track. It's a really dramatic song. And the track Blood on the Leaves, I love the horns from Tonight on this track, as well as the vocal sample from Nina Simone. I feel it's chopped up really interestingly and actually feels a little bit like the Watch the Throne track Otis in a way. There's a bit of a trap flavor to the beat, but the auto-tune on this song. Personally, I feel like this track does what annoyed a lot of people on 808s and Heartbreaks, and I'm not really seeing a reason to praise it on Yeezus. Especially with the lyrics that Kanye delivers in this track, with this party situation, this girl taking Molly with him, and then after this, the drama unfurls in the way that it would in a very bad reality show. The song Guilt Trip I was a little excited by because of how it recycles a vocal snippet that was used on one of the lead singles from Cruel Summer, but the sample is pitch shifted way low. On top of this, there are multiple layers of synths, some of which are swirling around with some effects on them, and Kid Cudi is singing on the track. All of this together makes the song feel like just a hodgepodge. Really cacophonous and not in a flattering way. And Kid Cudi, the dude tries so hard, but he is just not as good a singer as Kanye. At this point, especially with Cudi leaving good music, I don't really see what he brings to this track that Kanye couldn't have done on his own. And the song Send It Up with King L on the track, whose verse actually wasn't that bad, kind of understated, and Kanye's wasn't that bad either. It was kind of funny, especially with This Is the Best Thing in the Club since 50 put out in the club. But still, the synth riff on this thing, it just sounds like an alarm clock. Kanye is trying to do something loud and something bold and something noisier than he typically does, but it doesn't really come off as harsh or aggressive or pushing any kind of envelope. All it's really testing is my patience, and that's it really, especially with the very minimal beat on this track. I don't really see how it's going to do too well in the club, but then again, Kanye did consciously not really put a radio single onto this LP. The only song that I really felt was stellar on this track was the song Bound 2, the last song on this album. It features a pitch-shifted soul sample, it breaks in direction in a really surprising way around the middle point of the track, which I liked, and Kanye on this track, lyrically, I feel is just much more impressive than he typically is, even if he does throw out a corny punchline here and there like Brad Reputation. This sort of building off of a series of lines where Kanye is talking about how he has a bad reputation with women, whether they be 30-year-olds who are wearing Forever 21 clothing, drinking some champagne at a bar, or someone that he is in a long-term relationship with. And just the wordplay he lays into this track and the picture that he paints is just tragically romantic, especially as he's not really being a very reliable partner. He is asking his partner to forget bad things that have happened in the past, things that he's said, of course, maybe through buying this person material things. I don't know what it is about this kind of production. Not only do I enjoy hearing Kanye do it, but it brings out something in him where he is just a little bit more consistent lyrically. And topically, while Kanye's lyrics in this track don't portray him as a nice guy, still the song feels kind of dangerous, sexy, alluring. Compare this with the storyline on the track Blood on the Leaves, which just really feels like tabloid fodder, which essentially is what Kanye's life has boiled down to since the release of 808s and Heartbreaks. Overall, on this LP, there were a few tracks that I loved: New Slaves, a little bit of Black Skinhead, especially Bound 2. But again, I feel like Kanye has released an album where lyrically he is overacting and underwriting. There's some ambitious spots on this album, especially the end of Hold My Liquor, or the track Blood on the Leaves, especially how Kanye balances these more electronic elements with the Nina Simone sample and draws the track out to really be the longest song on this entire LP, 6 minutes. But he takes these great ideas and ruins them with cheaply applied auto-tune and, again, just really trashy, forgettable lyrics, which are things that I could see working a little bit better if Kanye were trying to write radio singles and just hot, quick pop singles. But I don't even really feel like he's doing that anymore. I don't even really see My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy as just simply a pop rap album, which isn't a bad thing. I think Kanye is growing beyond his pop rap past in a way, but still, even on an album as experimental as Yeezus, he reeks of it. And these mainstream rap ideas that Kanye can't let go of, they keep him from going as deep and as dark as his production implies, especially on this album, where Kanye is obviously mining from some underground hip-hop sounds, and I feel that he's just sounding like a fish out of water and is not riding the fringe as hard as the artists he's copying do. This album, in a word, is incredibly middlebrow. I'm feeling a light to decent 5 on Yeezus. If you've given this thing a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Kanye West, forever.